No, can you allow us? All right, good afternoon, everybody. Amory, can you close those doors? So, welcome to this rainy afternoon. Thank you for joining us. We are live on Zoom right now, and we are recording this program. So if anybody you know wants to see it, we're going to make this available perhaps on the Hunterdon Historical Society website, so that they have it for posterity. I'm Marcia Caro, in case any of you didn't know me. I am Saul Caro, class of 34's daughter.
Granddaughter.
No, no, I am his daughter. Dad was a late bloomer. And my aunt, Lucille Caro, I just blanked, Sherman, was class of 38. My aunt passed away in 2019 at the age of 99. And I'm Hunterdon Central High School class of 77. I am embarrassed that I did not wear red and black. So I'm also the chair of the Hunterdon 300, which was the Hunterdon Tricentennial Committee, and most recently a proud new member of the Historic Society. And we're here with Janice Armstrong, who is the president, and Dick Harding, who runs the day-to-day. Both of them in their own rights are historians, amazing. And the 100-300 volunteers that are around. After the program, we'll have refreshments. We always have refreshments for free at the end. We did ask you at the door if you were willing to contribute $5 towards the preservation of history. Our opening program was about preserving photographs and documents and quilts and wedding dresses. And we talked about how expensive it is in just a little acid-free envelope. This is not a little acid-free envelope. This is an acid envelope. But something this small runs like $5. And, you know, somebody donates a photograph book of, 100 photographs. It adds up fast, and acid-free tissue paper and a box to hold the wedding dress. By the time you pick the box and the tissue paper, you're at $100 for a free donation. So it adds up fast, and we appreciate your donations. We do not, the 100-300 does not take donations. We sell stuff, and we have rights to the county has allowed us to use the county logo on everything. And today we have rain jackets, and we have umbrellas in case you came out without either. We have our woven throw that has icons from all over the county. So if you're interested, and we have a blog that comes out for me personally by email, from my personal email address, Marcia2030 at Yahoo. It does not get used by any other organization, the 100-300, to let you know about our program. So if you want that blog, just sign up for it, give us your email address, and we'll get you on the list, and I'll be sending out a blog with all of our events, and we also cover all the other historical events of the county. So all our historical partners are on our list. And tomorrow night, the Grange in Ringo's is having a program on the history of fox hunting at 7:30 at the Grange. That did not make our blog, so I just wanted you to all know about that. I also, Dave is going to be passing out this form, if you would be so kind. You don't have to fill it out. But this is coming from the state of New Jersey to all of the historical partners in the county. And it is driving funding to not-for-profits, history not-for-profits, on how important they are. And it asks you questions about, coming out today. Did you spend any money? Did you go to have lunch? Are you going to have dinner? And it's going to also ask you your income level. You don't have to answer anything you don't want to answer. So don't. It's really none of the state's business. They know enough about you already. Regarding this program, I was in process of looking for my dad's 1934 yearbook. Dad was in the class with Charlie Fisher's parents. And he was also in the class with Bart Evans and a whole bunch of other people. I know Kyle Kiterman is watching on Zoom. His father was in the class before my dad, but they were very, very close friends. And I was looking for his yearbook, which I think my sister might have stolen. Dad he had all of his and his sisters as well. And I opened up the 1931 yearbook, just, Dad signed every one of them, they were his. And I found this, which the Historical Society wants to take it back with them today. I'm going to let them take it back. And it's, one side says 1928, the other says 1938. It's dated April 20th, 1938. I don't think it's seen the light of day since 1938. And it says, "Dear 28er," now my dad was class of 34, so I don't know. "We thought you might be interested in the picnic due to the fact that 33 have expressed a decided interest in attending it." So maybe that's why, because dad was in school, he was class of 34, but "The picnic will be held from 1 to 5:30 at the Flemington Fairgrounds, rain or shine, and the price is $1 per person. Incidentally, transportation will be furnished free from Flemington Junction to the fairgrounds." Those were the days. "There will be plenty to eat and drink, lots of entertainment, and room for all. We know that you will want to make it. If it is at all possible, because this is your 10th reunion. In case you can't attend the picnic, we would greatly appreciate any donation you care to make in order to cover expenses for favors, souvenirs, novelties, and entertainment at the banquet. Sincerely," this is my favorite part, "Ralph Muller."
Ralph
Chairman.
Muller.
And there was an RSVP card in here that dad never filled out, and it was pre-postage paid, back to Ralph Miller at 65 Broad Street in Flemington. And if any of you don't know who Ralph Muller was, he was a freeholder. He was the freeholder director at the time the building, the administration building on Main Street was built. He is the father of George Muller, who also became a freeholder. And I think that's pretty cool. Do you want to take this with you?
Sure. Thank you.
You're welcome. That's your Flemington High School collection.
There we go.
And that will cost at least $5 to preserve. You might not want to put it in back in the envelope, because you could just put that in there, because
Well,
that's just notes where I found it.
Yeah,
That I found it this morning. So you never know what kind of treasures you find when you open up stuff, and the Historical Society is interested in your treasures, if they are Hunterdon County related. And you all know your histories here. So at this point, I'm going to introduce our panel. Each of our speakers are going to get 10 minutes, and then we're going to open it up for conversations. As we advertised, Dick Stodoff was supposed to be with us, but he's gonna have a medical procedure. As doctor said, stay away from me and everybody else. So unfortunately, Dick is not with us today, but I'm gonna start with the ladies first. Starting closest to me is Lois Kitchen Stewart, who I've literally known since the day I was born. I'm gonna let her give you her age. And next to her is Justine Ryan, who I've also literally known since the day I was born. And new to me is Paul Cool, who I've only known for 31. I'm sorry, John Cool, who I've only known for 31 years. So John came into my life when I became a freeholder, I think, and fighting over the treasures of Hunterdon County and what the freeholders weren't willing to preserve, like jail doors. So I'm gonna now turn this over to, when you start, you can each do your name and class. So I'm gonna start with you. Oh, you want the audience to do their name and class?
Yes.
Okay, let's do that. Name and class from the audience. If you're not a Flemington High School grad, you can pass the mic, unless you're a Hunterdon Central grad.
Just out of curiosity, who attended Flemington High School here? I assume most of you.
I'm gonna give the mic to everybody in here who's a class
Okay.
Flemington person.
On this
All right.
side, nobody went?
Nobody from Flemington High.
Oh, me, Ross,
I did. Would you want your class name?
Oh, Doris Pliny,
1948.
48. I graduated from Hunterdon Central in 1958. So I was Joan Kickmiller case.
Joe Miller case.
Vilma Hockenberry, that was a Henkel, graduated in 1956.
Urban Hockenberry, graduated in 51, and I've had,
We'll get back to you.
Top Lodge,
Top Lodge.
Oh,
Yeah.
and I've got quite a few jokes.
Okay.
2, 4, 6, 8, who do we appreciate?
Norm Denby?
Top Lodge.
Get that down.
Jack Denby, class of 1948.
Wayne Fisher, class of 1956, last one.
Yes.
Janice Armstrong, Hunterdon Central, class of 71.
Mary Hodge, class of 1962.
Hank Snyder, class of 48.
God, I feel like a baby in here. I love this room.
Lee Ross, Lee Ross.
Oh, I'm sorry, Lee. I did.
Lee Ross, 1955.
Bye. I didn't go central. No, go central? Okay.
83 offline baby.
Oh, you're a baby. All right,
Okay,
Lois, you're on.
my name is Lois Kitchen Stewart and I graduated from.
Put it closer to the. Can't hear it.
Hold it
Now,
close, hold it like an ice cream cone.
Now, can you hear?
Yeah.
Okay, I hate this.
Hold it like an ice cream.
You want me to lick it? I graduated from from Flemington High School in June of 1951. And I was very young for my class because when I came from Pennsylvania in 1941, I was supposed to go to second grade, but Delaware Township did not have a second grade. And they weren't about ready to make one for one student. So I had to go to third grade. So I was a very young high school student. You want me to pass to them? Oh, okay, I say my thing now. Well, I have a lot to say, so. And I could have said more. Anyhow, they were good years from September 1947 to June 1951. They were wonderful years. Sure, there were a few bumps, a few disappointments. I was a teenager. You know, even then teenagers had problems. But I loved my time at Flemington High School and have many good memories. At first, I was really apprehensive and very anxious because I came from a one-room school in Delaware Township, Green Sergeants on the way to the covered bridge. We had 3 grades, 6, 7, and 8. We had less than 50 kids. I had never ridden a school bus. I had always walked to all my elementary school education. So I get on the bus and I come to Flemington and there's this gigantic building with all these rooms and a gym and an auditorium and bathrooms that, you know, were kind of foreign to me. And so it was a big change, but I want to share a few things that I remember. And the first thing I'm going to talk about is cheerleading. That's my sweater up there. I have my little megaphone. It was just a big thing for me. When a few weeks after I got to Flemington High School, I met a fellow student whose name was Rose Cola. We called her Coke, and I was Kitch. It was Coke and Kitch. We're grown up now, so it's Rose and Lois. But her older sister had been or was a cheerleader. And so Rose and I were just determined we were going to be cheerleaders. And we started immediately to practice because she knew all the routines from her sister. And we practiced. And then we learned that they were not going to have cheerleading tryouts this year. Well, we were devastated, but we kept at it. And the next year they had the tryouts. And we were very anxious because we had to get up there on the big stage in the big auditorium and do our little routines. And so we were waiting and finally they made the announcement and we were ecstatic because we both were selected to be on the cheerleading squad. And being a cheerleader was really a big thing at the high school. I mean, you kind of got into different groups that you might not have gotten into otherwise. Made my high school days wonderful. So I was a cheerleader, sophomore, junior, senior, and those years, the cheerleaders sponsored a sock hop. Was a big deal. We put brown butcher paper up on 3 sides of the gym, and then we drew and painted and wrote things that pertained to what was happening in the school at that specific time. And we wore socks and we danced to a record player. I mean, if anybody remembers what a record player is. So, and we are still friends. Rose and I are still friends. I was down in North Carolina last Saturday to see her. She's not well, she's 90. And she had a stroke, but I was determined and I found 2 friends that were willing to drive me down there. So I'm very fortunate And we went to Kernersville, North Carolina, and I walked in, I tapped her on the shoulder. I had written her a letter. And I tapped her on the shoulder and she looked around. I said, Rose, it's Lois, and her face, it was just the most fabulous thing to see her, because I had seen her once since she had a stroke, but her brain works, but she has lack of communication skills. But anyhow, this is the sweater that I got when I was a cheerleader, because just like boys got letters for participating in sports, we got letter sweaters. And I have my little megaphone, and I have my little megaphone here that we got. Unfortunately, I put it on. It was a little small. With trouble getting it off. But there it is. And in my class, in our class will, I just want to mention this, I left my Charles Atlas, you say I bequeath to. I left my Charles Atlas book to all Flemington High School fellows who have unsuccessfully tried to make the football team. I was very thin. Matter of fact, some of the upper class people would taunt me, the boys would taunt me and say, if you stand sideways and stick out your tongue, you'll look just like a zipper. So to a young teenage girl, you can imagine that was not very,
Well, classmates said the same thing.
pardon?
Your classmates said the same thing.
Oh, really? All right. It was my class. Of course, there were lots of other activities that were fun and memorable. The school had a lot of clubs to us, wouldn't be money today, well over a dozen. And clubs were held during the day because there were no buses. And most kids came to Flemington High School on the bus, and there were no activity buses. So the clubs were held during an activity period once a week on school time. Freshman and sophomore years, I belonged to Mask and Sandal. Traumatic happening when I was a freshman. I was chosen to be in this play, and a fellow freshman boy was also in the play. And one of the scenes in the play required him to put his arm around my shoulders. And I found that so embarrassing and so distressing, and I felt very uncomfortable about that. I was 13 at the time. So anyhow, then in the junior year, we had a phys ed teacher, Dottie Mae Peterson. She became Dottie Mae Williams while we were in high school, but she was Dottie Mae Peterson, and she was a very good, progressive, fun kind of teacher. I mean, demanding and strict, but still fun. And so she started a modern dance group. So I left the Mask and Sandal and I went to the modern dance group. And so for 2 years, the most memorable thing about the modern dance group was that a fellow member, Mary Ann Wallace, and we performed I'm Gonna Wash That Man Right Out of My Hair on the stage of the auditorium, and we used real soap and water. So that was a fun thing. Now, senior year was very special because walking into the assembly programs first and walking up the front steps of the high school, they were traditions for seniors. And so we took advantage of those traditions. I remember our class trip. We went to Hershey Park. I mean, it's very different from where they go now. There was a class night. Oh, this was really fun. There was a class night in June before we graduated. It was held at the then Flemington Grange on Court Street. And the feature of the night was a hypnotist. I think previous classes had hypnotists. And it was really, really, I've never seen a hypnotist. And I volunteered immediately, but I was so apprehensive they couldn't hypnotize me. So I didn't get to be hypnotized, but I did watch my fellow classmates, and it was just really, really fun. The guy even got one of the kids into a situation where they cried. And I remember another classmate was selling mouse traps, and he would make a trap with his hand and run his like he was a mouse. It was very, very interesting. Graduation was held in the Presbyterian Church at practice. Elizabeth Northstein, she was our senior English teacher, and she was always also the senior class advisor. And she was determined that we were going to walk into that church. If anybody's familiar with the Presbyterian Church, there's double doors on each side. We're going to come around, come up the back, come down the aisle, go up into the choir loft. But you could not have your cap tilt. You had to walk in such a way that your cap stayed perfectly flat the whole time you were walking. I thought we would never get it right. It was really one of the hardest things I had to do as a student at Flemington High School. Other things that I remember were the Friday noontime dances. Everybody would gobble down their lunches. We ate in the auditorium. Most people brought bag lunches, but a few would rush downtown to get something to eat at a local restaurant. But then you would race to the gym where again we danced to a record player. Each class had annual dance, and the freshman sophomore dances were just regular dances where you wore special clothes, but not prom dresses. And then the junior and senior years you had the prom. And I remember the freshman dance because freshman year was a big thing for me because I'd come from Surgeonsville. I mean, Surgeonsville then was not like Surgeonsville today. And everybody had a poodle skirt. I mean, they were the big things, poodle skirts. And so we all wore poodle skirts to our freshman dance. Being kicked out of chemistry class by Francis X. Strohaver was really a traumatic event in my high school days because I was a pretty goody two-shoes person. And I towed the mark, and a beaker of boiling hot water got spilt. I had nothing to do with it, but the two guys in front of me at the lab station there, they were the ones that knocked it over, but somehow they convinced Francis X, that was my fault, out. So down to the office I went, where Jeanette Hall and Jane Worst were the secretaries, and of course they were really amazed to see me coming, but that was the punishment that you got for a minor infraction. You had to go sit in the office. Oh, I forgot when I was talking about the dances, because I just remembered that today when I was driving up here. Somebody in town, some organization made a deal with Paul Whiteman. So the kids of Flemington High School got to dance to the Paul Whiteman Orchestra in the auditorium of Flemington High School during the time that I was there. I don't know how long it went on or when it really began, but at any rate. Now the Echo, which we have some here, that was a really big deal in the high school yearbook. Students were with oversight, of course, and guidance from the council, yes, Marcia, from the council, from the faculty, made the decisions and did the work. And senior year, I was an associate editor. The editorial staff were all seniors. The advertising staff came from all the grades, and ads were sold to local businessmen, and signatures were sold too on 2 pages to make money to help financially support the endeavor. The 1951 Echo, my year, was dedicated to Harry Nestle. He had been in service in World War II before he came to Flemington. And when I arrived in 47, he was the principal. But he was recalled to return to the military during the time I was in high school. And Howard Apgar, who was the junior English teacher, became the acting principal. And I know Howard Apgar was the acting principal in my junior and senior years. And I know Harry Nisley was the principal when I was a freshman, but I can't remember when he left, and I don't know, I can't remember who the principal was unless I can see somebody's yearbook, and oh my goodness, I have so much work.
That is over, I know, but we'll get back.
Yes, so much work, because I didn't talk about the great faculty.
We'll get back.
Marsh.
So Lois and I bonded last year over the fact that I had Dottie Williams as a gym teacher from the first grade to sixth, that she had her in high school. And it's amazing that you could have the same teachers 25 years apart. So our next speaker is Mrs. Ryan. You can give them your class and.
I'm Joe Neff Ryan, and I thought I'd preface my speech with the fact that I went to two one-room schoolhouses in Raritan Township. One was Copper Hill on 31, and we walked there. Can you imagine? We were walking as little kids walking to school on Route 31 202 today. And then I transferred to Pleasant Ridge School. The school that was on the Ringo's Wardsville Road. And that school wasn't, it was only as, I don't think it was half as big as this room. And we had all 8 classes in there. So you can imagine going from there to Flemington High School. It was, you just imagine going from one class to another, and one teacher for one subject was just sort of overwhelming. But I can very well remember the first day I went to school, Hunterdon Central. We had homerooms. Homerooms were by last names, you know, ABC. And there was a class, there was one girl in that, we only had in our class one black girl, Helen Reesner, the nicest girl you'd ever jump. She was a cheerleader. As far as I can ever see, we had no problems with. I mean, there was never any problems like there is today with, you know, color. And she had the exact same dress on as I had for the first day of school, which was bought at Blair's clothing store. So then I took the commercial course because I was not college bound. And I had Mrs. Lamont. Everybody remembers Mrs. Lamont. And I can well remember when in the 1946-47, there was a campaign on to start the Hunterdon Medical Center. We didn't have a hospital here in Flemington. And our class, or the business class, had to make these flyers to send out to people. And we had to type them on this mimeograph machine, I don't remember what they were called. And you put them on a mimeograph machine, and it was around, and you know, and they were dirty and ink. It was, But we typed all those flyers to start the Hunterdon Medical Center, I remember. And then I had a wonderful history teacher by the name of Bazo. Everybody remembers Bazo. And to this day, I'm a history buff. He was such a wonderful teacher. And Mrs. Henneke was a business teacher. And she was a very kind, understanding person. Believe me, she had to be. Lunchtime, Lois alluded to that. We ate in the auditorium. We brought our own lunches. We could buy milk for 5 cents a quart. I think it was 5 cents. And then we would go down, we could walk downtown, and we would get a soda or an ice cream popsicle at Higgins's or Green's Pharmacy. We'd walk back. That was every lunch hour, lunch. That was all we did. And then, of course, every Friday were the dances in the gym. The kids could, then it was, as Lois said, it is, with a record. We had the records. Our dances, we had prom, we had class, every class had a dance, but the big thing was the junior prom. And only juniors and seniors were allowed to go to those dances. And as a classmate, we had a committee. We decorated the auditorium. borrowed from Flemington cut glass centerpieces or whatever. And we did the decorating, and our class did not have a prom queen, but I know the next class did, but we didn't have that. But then there was no such thing as going to the shore or anything else like that. But that was our big deal, was to go to the junior prom. Then I had three principals. I had Doc Goldsmith was my freshman year. Dr. Wayman was the second year. Miss Nisley was the third and fourth year. Dr. Wayman brought in John Krause. Previous to that, they had a very small band, a music department. I think there was only about 10 kids in the music in the band. John Krause came in, and I'll tell you, he just turned that school upside down with his music department. He was a strong German, and to this, I mean, I can still remember whenever we would win a game, a football game, the band would go to Main Street, Flemington, and we could march right up Main Street because we had won a football game. And I can still see Kathy Timmerman. She was the drum majorette. Well, that was something. I mean, beautiful, tall girl going down Main Street. And to this day, when I go up to Memorial, to watch our band from Hunterdon Central, I still have to cry because I'm just so proud of that music department. Our education was definitely very basic, but it helped me make a living, have a good life in Flemington, and I think I got a very good education. And I've always been on the reunion committee here in Flemington of our class, and several classmates of mine are here tonight. And I've always kept up a roster of whom we knew was still alive, who was gone, and I would read the Democrat to see who was. We did it every 5 years. We would have a reunion, and then last August we had our last reunion because we didn't think we could make 75. It was 74. But I will say it was just a good year. We really were very innocent kids because back then we had a principal. There was 2 people in the office. We had 1 guidance counselor. Now you compare that with Hunterdon Central that today has 4 counselors just for drug and alcohol abuse. We had nothing like that, or if we did, I didn't know about it. And we had no discrimination against Blacks or Jews, right? I mean, right? There was no, and we were just a small, my class was only 114. So I have no regrets. And I thank the taxpayers of Hunterdon County for what they gave me. Thank you very much.
All right, John, you're on.
I didn't realize we had to talk for 10 minutes, but I'm so
Always take your extra minute.
no, I probably have plenty to say.
Slow.
The first thing I did for this was go online and see what I could find about the history of Flemington High School. And there's nothing, absolutely nothing on there. You can, I'm not a computer expert, but I know how to use Wikipedia and find a grave and all that business. But if you type in Flemington High School, all you get is Hunterdon Central. There's nothing about Flemington High School online.
Future book for John Cool.
What's that?
It's a future book for you, I see.
No, I think my books are done. But high school was a remarkable experience for me as well as these ladies. I too came from South Reddington. Now, South Reddington was the poor cousin of everybody in the Sending district. White House had a modern school, a big school. Three Bridges had nothing. They tried to build, starting in 1938, a modern school, but everybody in Stanton and Reddington voted against it because of their damned if they were gonna let,
Farmers.
spend all that money and not have their school in their town. So I started school in Three Bridges in 1939 in beginners, and we were four of us, 4 grades in the one class. Gladys Howell was our teacher. She was a very good teacher. And then 4th and 5th grades, we went to Pleasant Run. We were bused to Pleasant Run for Ethel Curtis, again, an outstanding teacher. And she had 6 grades in this one schoolroom in Pleasant Run. And I don't know how she did it, but she did it. She was there in the morning to get the fire started, and had to go out and pump water. And we had a clay crock for water. She filled that up and stuff. But it wasn't a room enough at Pleasant Run to even have a ball field. So they just gave us a soccer ball, and we would kick that around and kick each other too once in a while. But and then on to Three Bridges for 6th, 7th, and 8th for Blanche Berlon. Again, I was always impressed with the quality of teaching we had. But I never went to a Reddington Township school that had indoor plumbing. It was all the outdoor Johns. There was just 2 rooms. There was no auditorium. There was no gymnasium. If it was really rainy, you sat at your desk pretty much. And well, finally we made it. 15 of us graduated from Three Bridges in 1948. We went to Flemington High School. And it was a shocking, it was quite a shock to go up. Each one of these ladies have commented on it. We have a couple of Three Bridges alumni sitting right here in the front row. And they remember how it was. But high school was never one of my favorite things. I didn't like it much. Remember, we had no programs. We never had a sports team in grammar school. We never had a dance in grammar school. We never had any of that social business that people today take for granted. But somehow we got an education. And in my senior year, our guidance counselor, and I even forgotten her name.
Mrs. Gray.
Miss Scott.
Was it
I
Mrs.
thought it was a man.
Oh. We had Mrs. Gray.
Miss Scott.
Anyway, she recommended that I take this exam to get a college scholarship sponsored by the Navy. So I took the exam, was in Princeton. And if you ever been to Princeton, a lot of old buildings, and I only got through by a little subterfuge. I needed to take a leak. It was a 3-hour exam. Once you went in, you couldn't come out. And I found a janitor's closet, and I used a sink. And I flushed it down, and I passed the exam. And nobody happier than my dad, because it was complete scholarship. They paid everything except room and board, and they gave you $50 a month for that. It wasn't enough, but I went on to Penn State. I must have learned my lessons well, because after 2 years, I was navigating a ship in the Antarctic. So I brought this along. Dick Stoner dropped off this issue of the Patriot. It was the early yearbook of Flemington High School in June 1918. And Dick was particularly struck by one passage, the editorial by Joseph Blois in the class of 18. And I'll read it. A note of appreciation. We, the senior class of Flemington High School, wish to take this opportunity to express to our friends and the school authorities our gratitude and thanks for the privileges and pleasures which we have enjoyed during our 4 years of high school. It is with a feeling of regret and at the same time a sense of triumph and achievement that we leave our school in which we have prepared ourselves for our future life. It has been a great privilege for us to be able to attend such an institution as the Flemington High School because of both the academic and social advantages which we have derived from her. We are sure that in the future, the things which whole paper. And the friends of our school have done for us will hold a cherished place in all our hearts. Dick did think that perhaps today's students quite appreciated what they get here and as an education as we did, as they did. So he wanted me to read that, so.
Right, take that back from you. Before I forget, since you brought up newspapers, we are giving away for free. There's a 1930, January 3rd and January 10th, copies from the Lindbergh trials. We have a whole bunch that we're going to be giving away during this whole series. You can just take them, take as many as you want. We have tons of them, courtesy of John Cool.
Just let me mention before you shut me off.
Sorry.
John Krause. He was a singular person. I didn't do much in the way of organization because I had to go home and work in a family feed mill, and on the weekends we vaccinated chickens, thousands of them.
Yeah.
But anyway, I had music lessons. I played clarinet and 4 years of band and 4 years of the orchestra. I was #1 clarinet. I don't think I could play the best, but I could play the loudest. John Krause was a man who liked bands and marching. He, as an army officer, had led the army band into Tokyo for the surrendering. But he loved to march, and he was a singular. Well, you had to know him, I guess.
John Krause retired the year before my freshman year, but he used to take that marching band down Elwood Avenue in Flemington
Yeah.
every single day, and my mom would be out there blowing kisses.
On my notes, since of John Krause, on my notes, I have faculty members that I wanted to speak about. And I called them institutions of Flemington High School. And then I talked about people who came recently, who became institutions of Flemington High School. And John Krause is first on that list. And the little note that I wrote next to John Krause's name was, he was a force to be reckoned with, because he certainly was a dynamic, take charge person. And as a cheerleader, our cheerleading squad would have a few little run-ins with Mr. Krause, because when a touchdown was scored or something, and we were ready to do our little celebration for the score, no, the band played. And so Mr. Krause, and as you all know, I'm sure that the honors that he brought to the school for that music program were substantial. But he was not yet an institution in Flemington High School when I went there. He was an up-and-coming institution. Can I talk about the faculty?
Yeah,
Can I talk about the
the
faculty?
faculty.
First, the faculty. I agree with these two people. I got a good education. I don't know what I really expected, but after I got out of school and I went on to being a secretary first, then I went to work for the state where I was for 30 years, and I got my degree from Trenton State. I realized that I had been well prepared for life at Flemington High School. And as I said, some were institutions, and I just recite some of these names because who can forget? Millie Godley, freshman in
Tell me you.
Blanche Lamont,
Yeah.
shorthand and office practice. Elizabeth Northstone, tough lady, but such a wonderful teacher, one of my favorites. Dolly Zugner,
Yeah.
wonderful woman. Unfortunately, she was killed in an airplane crash. And Gertrude Bedine, who was the nurse, she was a wonderful lady. We call her. And she was the nurse for the high school and the elementary school, which was located right behind. And then we have H. Earl Davison. I had him for bookkeeping. Look, they're holding their head. I had H. Earl for for bookkeeping. Because I wanted to go to college, but knew the chances were slim, so I was preparing both sides of the coin. And H. Earl would remind me that he had taught my father and my Aunt Eleanor and my Aunt Catherine and my Aunt Gladys and my Aunt Ruth and my Aunt Bertha. And the list went on, and this was like 25 years before I got there. But he would remind me and he would tell me that he expected me to be an outstanding student. It was harassment, I think. Then there was Mr. Lodge, Pop Lodge, and there was Mr. Leon Hall, and then your dear Louisa Brisky. Now, I didn't have those because they all taught male subjects, but they were well respected throughout the high school. They were really good guys.
Lois, do you remember Mr. Davis's nickname?
Bulldog. Yes, he was, but then there were a couple of teachers that I had that had not yet become institutions. I've spoken about John Krause as they did, but Carrie Teal, she was a wonderful home ec teacher. And she became very well liked and well respected. And then, of course, Francis X. Strohaber, he was science and physics and whatever. And Stan the Man Dreswick, some of them were central.
Sure
did.
Sure did, he was still there when I was there.
Yeah. So they were really good. And I had my cheaters on. Oh, but some were a little kooky. One, my art teacher, Maxwell Schiat. This bracelet was made by Maxwell Schiat. He had a craft place in Clinton. There's the tag. So, but the reason I called him kooky was because he would take his used tea bags and tie them on the window shade pulls to dry so that he could use them again. So I thought that was I mean, I didn't come from an affluent family, but nobody that I knew hung their tea bags up to. I wanted to talk about sports a little bit, just a little bit. They were a big thing in Flemington High School, weren't they? When we were there, sports were a big thing. There was football, basketball, and baseball for the guys, and basketball and field hockey for the girls. The cheerleaders cheered for the guys' sports, but we didn't cheer for the girls' sports. And FHS did pretty good in competition with the other high schools in the area. And John Locke, how many people remember Coach Locke? I didn't play for him, he had enough, but he was a really great guy. And he was the coach for the boys' sports. And I feel I would be remiss not to mention him. He was well liked by the entire student body, but his contract was not renewed for the 51-52 year. In spite of wide support and petitions with many, many names, both from parents and students, the Board of Education would not change their decision. And to this day, I do not know why John Locke was not retained as a coach at Flemington High
There's
School.
one reason why I knew a lady on that Board of Education.
Pardon?
I knew a lady on that Board of Education.
And what did she say?
One of the reasons was they didn't like the way he treated the boys at practices, halftime in football games, language he used. That was a definite negative towards him.
Well, I'm glad to know that, Norman.
That was Dorothy Hartman.
Dottie Hartman.
Hartman.
Oh, I knew Dottie Hartman. Her son Bill was in her class.
She despised him
Oh, my.
because of that.
But other people loved him.
Her son played football, Spanish,
Oh.
and she got the feedback, Stan would often say at the intermissions, whatever, and it wasn't the best.
Oh, yeah, but I just want to talk. Another good guy I wanted to mention before Marsh takes us away from it was who remembers Mr. Barry? He was the janitor. And he came and he did his janitorial duties with his dog. And he lived right next door to the high school. Okay, you can let them
I
talk.
was
for a
gonna
minute.
let you this too. Talk for a tagline story.
Well, I'm going back with all these people here. Very fond memories for me, but, I don't know whether people know it, but John Locke, who was our football coach,
Yes.
originally was a Green Bay Packer.
Oh, I didn't
And he
know.
played for the Green Bay Packers, when he was younger. And you could tell by his face, it was all banged up. He was one rough son of a gun. But,
But he was a good guy, wasn't he?
we had no face med, no, just a helmet. But, my career it started in, it was very short, by the way. In this, sophomore year, I went out, for football and, I lined up with Frank Navarro on one side, he was in front of me. And, Glenn Hooper, who outweighed everybody in the school, was next to him. Navarro hit me low. Hooper hit me high, knocked me way over the other side of the line. And my buddy, Henry Gavatsky, had been knocked down, came up and hit me right here in the chest, broke my rib. And that was the end of my career. Anyway, my memories were very happy at Canal Street High School. One of my favorite teachers was Mr. Hand, who taught mathematics.
Oh, yes, Mr. Algebra.
And, he was a prince. And, in fact, Henry Cole was in our math class. And, one of the things that happened after I got out of school, you probably all know about, but, I used to sit next to Gene Zelensky.
Oh, yeah. Oh,
Next to my, he was right in the aisle next to me in the front row. And, she was an A student, she was
yes,
really
she
bright.
was smart.
And then after I got out of school, I was going home one afternoon, turned on the TV. I couldn't believe what I heard. Gina Lewinsky is reported to have cut off her mother's head and put it on the Capitol,
She did, yes, she did.
Capitol building in Trenton.
Yeah, oh, yeah.
That was, couldn't believe she did. Anyway, so that was the sad thing about one of our students. Anybody?
No? Anything over the track here?
My story is just a little bit different. My great grandfather, when he was discharged from the Northern Army in the Civil War, and I have a beautiful piece of artwork, which is his discharge papers on the wall of my office. He settled above Wriggle Ridge in Holland Township and had 7 children. His youngest was Ira Kraus, who is the father of my mother. And all of my life, I've come to Flemington and Hunterdon County, although our family from my first 2 years of high school was in Perth Amboy. I've occasionally been asked, are you a native of Hunterdon County? And I'm not exactly sure how to answer it. I wasn't born here, but my grandfather was. At any rate, because I went to 3 different high schools, I spent my first 2 years, freshman and sophomore, in Perth Amboy High School with over 2,000 students. I then, because my family was moving to Flemington, and they moved to Church Street. When they moved to Flemington, they said, so I wouldn't have to switch schools during the year, they sent me off to prep school in Massachusetts. And they bribed me to go by saying they would give their permission to let me play football. In Perth Amboy High School, they were not going to let me play football. And a number of my friends did, and I very much wanted to. What I didn't know was they sent me off to a prep school where I didn't need a parent permission slip to do anything at prep school. if you wanted to do it, you got to do it. And I managed, not having played the first 2 years, to make a 40-man football squad as the smallest lineman on that squad. And I was almost 6'2" at the time. And it was a team that only played its varsity games against college freshmen, principally Ivy League college freshman teams. Sports have been so important in my life that it was a real driving force. When I got to Flemington High School for my senior year, I could not play football. I always felt my mother and the guidance counselor and the principal conspired to prevent me from doing so. As it turned out, it was lucky that they did, because one of the football players came down with polio that year. The first half of our football season was canceled and the team did not do all that well. But a player from the year behind us, Gerhard Schwades, did play basketball, went on to Syracuse, where he played football, and he was the most valuable player in the Cotton Bowl as a player who had played at Flemington High School and went on to Syracuse to play, and then had a few years of a professional career. I was so focused on basketball that when I got to Flemington High School, I met Bill Kinnaman. Bill was the son of a banker on Main Street, and one of his best friends had left to go to West Point. And so he and I became fast friends. He was a basketball player. He was not allowed to play football because he had been diagnosed as having a potential detached retina. And they were afraid that if he played, it would become detached, which at that era was not something that was very fixable. So during the football season, he worked for the Democrat reporting on the games, and I had some skill as a photographer, so I worked as a photographer. And the two of us worked the sideline, writing stories and taking pictures. And the two of us were two of the people who helped the part-time sports editor, who was Fran Strauss at the post office. We helped him pick the first all-county football team. And of course, a number of our guys from Flemington were on that team. We had a successful basketball season. I went to the coach, who was an English teacher. I said I understood he was the coach. I was interested in playing basketball. He said, well, my senior captain who brought the ball down the court graduated, so I've got a spot. Can you do that? I had never done that before. I'd been a center or a forward, but I said I wanted to play, so I said, of course I can. And so I ended up doing that. I became a starter on the team. He had never seen me play, but he knew I played at Perth Amboy High School. He knew I played at Andover. I guess that was enough for him to give me the opportunity. And I think that our team that year won something like 19 regular season games. And Lois, we enjoyed the cheerleaders. The basketball team, the cheerleaders ran our sock hops and cheered at our games. And that was a big part of the fun. I had an interview for college at 2 Main Street. There were 3 Princeton alumni. And Bill, my friend, Bill Kinnaman, and I both played basketball. We were both honor students, and we were given an opportunity for this interview, 3 Princeton alumni. In those days, the alumni in schools like that had a huge amount of control of what happened in those schools. And they knew I had played football for a year at Andover. And in the process of the interview, they said, if you go to Princeton, of course, you'll play football. And I guess I was more honest than I should have been, because I said, no, I won't. I only want to play basketball. And I was told, if you go to Princeton and play football, you're in. And if you don't, you're on the waiting list. And I ended up on the waiting list and said, I'm not gonna be on anybody's waiting list, so I ended up going to Oberlin in Ohio. Which was a good move, because that's where I met my wife, who was a student there. And she was a music student, and of course, as a number of you know, she's the person who started the Hunterdon Symphony Orchestra here. And that gives you as much as I'm gonna give you.
That was-
Lee Roth, because Lee really got.
And was that Bernie Jensen
Bernie
Yeah.
Jensen was the English teacher,
was your coach?
and he was the basketball coach. He was not much of a basketball coach. He had read every coach's magazine out there and came up with the most complicated plays I've ever seen. I don't think we ever used any of them, but we were a good cohesive group that worked together and did pretty well.
Everything goes around and comes around. I dated Bill Kinnon's son.
Mhm.
Being a baby, and Mrs. Strauss, Fran Strauss's wife, was my first grade teacher. So, or just as for the record, since we are recording, if you want to just identify yourself. for me.
Yeah, I'm Norm Denby, class of Flemington High School, 1951. And talking about one-room schoolhouses, I went to one-room schoolhouse from 2nd to 8th grade. My mother was my teacher for 3 of those years, 5th, 6th, 7th grade. My brother attended it. My brother here attended it. So my brother who just passed away in December, graduated in 1946, went to the Navy, went to the Naval Academy, and retired from the Navy some years ago. Well, he always used to brag, he skipped 5th grade in the one-room schoolhouse.
Mhm.
I used to brag about that. A few years back, he was up here visiting. And I was telling him how smart he was at that. I used to brag about the fact that you skipped the grade. He says, let me tell you a story, Mom. The year I was going to be in 6th grade, I was going to be the only kid. I'm sorry, yeah, 6th grade. I was going to be the only kid in 6th grade, so they put me in 7th. Nothing to do with my intelligence. So one school. And to go back to the hypnotism, Frank Cole, one of the toughest guys you ever want to meet in your life, played football, was a farmer. And the guy hypnotized him, and he had Frank sitting at a Christmas dinner at his home as a young boy. And here's Frank, this big tough guy, suddenly puts his hands around his neck. And the hypnotist said, what are you doing? I'm putting my bib on. Well, a guy like that's putting his bib on, it was kind of funny, so that's all just added story. But everybody, great, thank you, it's good to be here, thanks for inviting me. And I got my personal invitation, I really appreciate it. So, thanks.
I have a question for John. Have you ever considered having that 1918 article copied and make a little booklet out of
It's
it?
not mine, it belongs to Dick Stoda.
Okay.
Tell him.
Yeah.
We're gonna wrap it up soon, and then I'll make
I
an
have-
announcement. Go ahead.
Couple things.
I'll just stand up. This is going to be just a little bit different. I'm going to tell you, when playing volleyball, and I went up and hit the net with Stresic, and he fell on the floor and broke an arm. So that's how I started in sports. But let's get down to, I left the little Rayville school and went to the high school. And here they was, we worked out in the gym, and then they told us we had to take showers. And there you had to drop your britches and take a shower. That was shocking to me. So that's the way my year started in high school. But with other things, with, oh, I slipped my name. What was the name? Ag teacher anyhow. I can't think of it at the moment. He had us there. And that guy, the kids I'll tell you what happened. He had a new hat. But in the ag class, they had a centrifugal thing that would test milk. He put his hat, somebody put his hat on, not on, in it, and turned it on. You want to see his hat? This is somebody that went with that man. Everything. So, his tools all disappointed. Yeah, he bought new tools. They were gone. Nobody knew where they was. Somebody stole them. No, it wasn't stolen. The 2 floors between the grammar school thing and the other one. All the tools were back inside of that school in them spaces. So that's where that went. And then if the fire whistle blew, all the boys jumped out of the window, went downtown, had some ice cream, come back with our fudge. And that's how we got our education. So, no, I was finally, I got smart. Another guy and I, we last year of school, and we took double math classes, both of us. And he'd do the homework one night and I would do it the next. And we passed that class with flying colors. That's the way that went. So, no, I can't say that I haven't had a good education out of the school. Because I've done lots of things. I'm a national 4-H winner for the whole state, and no, a whole country. You know, 1 year I got the award for being a national 4-H winner.
Wow.
And that's the way my life went. I was in 4-H class. I'm still there with helping out with 4-H. I guess I always will be. And once I'll tell you this side story. When he's building a hospital here in Flemington, we gathered junk for
sale.
making money. And then they had 2 animals people bought, and one of what's it called? I slipping mind. The 2 Guernseys in Jersey. Yeah. My father bought both of them, one for me and one for my sister. So we took them home and raised them and showed them in the 4-H fairs. And this is where I began to take over when my father was in April and I took over the board. When we went on, and we've done well, really well. And I'm going to tell you, Rayville Church, I bought it and paid for it. And I'm not going to tell you how many thousands I paid. It's here.
That's another, that's another one. Are we smart enough to also marry Vilma? So after Hunterdon Central High School, or Flemington High School. We do have a 4-H program coming up later this season.
Yes.
With memorabilia from the Historic Society, and next week we're doing samplers. Marty Campanelli is coming back to visit and talk about the samplers of a specific pair of sisters. That sampler is that's on May 7th in this room. And again, if I'm gonna let John Cool get the last word, but I just want to, if you want to know our programs and you're not on my blog that I send out, again, personally for me, don't give out addresses. You don't have to worry about it being shared. Please sign up for our blog with your email address and take some free newspapers. We'll have refreshments in the back. Please don't bring them up to the artifacts at all. No food or drink over there, but you're welcome to stay. We have this room booked solid to talk among yourselves and reminisce. And what, Lois?
I want to ask how many graduates still have their class ring?
How many graduates still have their class ring?
Yeah. It's not on. You know, these two.
It used to fit on this finger, but now it's.
I'm gonna let John Cool, take the last word, and I just want to say, I did not find Lois's yearbook over there. The Historical Society is missing a few years. Dave Harding is gonna send me what years they're missing. I am gonna put it out on my blog that we're looking for them as donations to the Historic Society, so they have a full set of Flemington High School.
And other high schools also.
And other high schools as well. And I did find Mr. Handsome over here's picture in his yearbook, and I have to say that Mrs. Ryan was like movie star quality, beautiful. So when I saw her picture, so I think you should all look, but I did not find your yearbook over there. So well, that's why. I'm sure you were a Cupid doll, so in your little cheerleading outfit. So John, you can have the last word. Since you didn't take a lot of time.
I just want to reinforce Bernie Jensen. He probably didn't weigh more than 95 or 100 pounds, soaking wet. But he was to me, the most progressive teacher in that high school. He took us all to Broadway. You're gonna say what, Shakespeare? No, Stalag 17. And it was a tremendous show. That's just the way he was. And you could do, as an English project, anything you wanted to do. He didn't tell you what to do, just graded it. So, and then one more thing, Lee mentioned basketball. It just wasn't a thing in these one-room schools. I never laid eyes on a basketball until I got to high school. So we were hopeless when it came to competing against the city kids. They go.
The city kid.
But I never once felt that I got anything but the best education out of the local schools.
So if you donated today towards the Historic Society, I mean, that was a donation, we appreciate it. If you didn't, Carol in the back at the food table is happily taking donations. If you over donated, we're only asking for $5, we really appreciate it. And please enjoy refreshments, the table talk, ask questions, take a look at the stuff that people brought. And we hope you'll sign up and you'll come back to another one of these our special theme this year, which is showing the fabulous artifacts out of the Historic Society, which most people never get a chance to see. So thank you for coming.